The guy next to me on the bus did his jacket up and said to me, "When I was a kid, we didn't have Velcro." "No," I said, "same for me. No Velcro. Funny, isn't it?" he said. "We got along fine with zips and buttons." "Yeah," I said. "Mind you, not many people know that zips had to be invented," he said. "I mean, if you asked them, were zips invented, I don't think most people would say that they were." "What about buttons?" I said. "I like buttons. My mum had a button box." "Do you think most people would know that buttons were invented?" he said. "I think so," I said. He said, "I'm not so sure. People take buttons for granted these days." "Do you know the zip on my jacket isn't working?" I said. He said, "The thing about Velcro is the amount of time it saves." "Really?" I said. "You bloody bet it does," he said. "Every time I Velcro up this jacket, I save about 3 or 4 seconds. Imagine what that is across a lifetime." "Well, it wouldn't be a lifetime for you, though," I said, "because Velcro has come in halfway through your life, hasn't it?" "That's right," he said, "but think about it from the kids' point of view. They're saving hours and hours already. It's why I feel so good about the future," he said. "These kids are going to do so much more than people of my generation." "I think that's what my grandparents thought when the zip came in," I said. "Ah, yes," he said, "yeah. My grandmother lived for about 10 years in America," I said, "and she really liked zips." "Listen," he said, and pulled the jacket open very quickly. "Every time I do that, I think, it was only a few years ago. You'd never have heard that. I can't imagine a world without the sound of Velcro." "That's not what Paul Simon sang, was it?" "Sang what?" he said. "No, nothing. No, you know. The sound of silence, you know." "No," he said. No. There's no Velcro in the sound of silence." Now, it would be great if you subscribed. That is, you become a subscriber. Look out for the subscribe button. What happens, you see, is that I make new vids every few months, and then I post them up one a week for a while. So if you subscribe, you get to see the new ones just as they come hot off the press. Clever cakes and other stories. The Jester and the King. For many years, Matenko had been the jester of King Jan of Poland, entertaining the king and his court with jokes, tricks, and funny faces. But now, Matenko was growing old, and people no longer laughed at his jokes. Rheumatism made it hard for him to turn somersaults. His face was so wrinkled that he could no longer make it look funny, and his memory was becoming so bad that he could no longer learn new jokes. Finally, the king decided that he must get a new court jester. He called Matenko and said, "The queen and I are very, very sorry, Matenko, but you are getting old. It is time for you to retire. Take this purse of gold pieces and go and live in a little cottage which I've had built especially for you in the village where you were born." Matenko was heartbroken. Sadly, he and his wife, Wanda, carried their belongings from the great court to the humble little cottage the king had given them. There were not many gold pieces in the king's purse, and soon they had almost no money left. "How can I earn a living?" wondered Matenko. "Telling jokes is the only trade I know." He looked for work in the village, but the only jobs to be had were sweeping floors, digging ditches, or collecting potatoes. And his rheumatism was too bad to allow him to do any of these. Wanda also tried to find work, but there was no one in the village rich enough to pay someone else to do the cooking or washing for them. At last, the 2 old people were starving. "There's nothing else to do, my dear, but lie down and die," Matenko said in despair one day. Then suddenly he had an idea. "Wait," There's just one chance that we may not have to starve. Wanda, my good wife, trust me and do just as I tell you." Then Matenko explained the plan to her. That very evening, Wanda put on her best clothes and chopped a raw onion so that tears ran down her wrinkled cheeks. Then she went to the palace to see the Queen. Your Majesty," Wanda sobbed, "my poor Matenko, my poor Matenko is dead." The Queen felt very sorry indeed for the poor old woman and gave her a purse full of gold coins to pay for the funeral and to buy food for herself. Still sobbing, Wanda thanked the good Queen and came home. "We have 50 gold pieces! Hurrah!" cried Matenko, and he danced about the little cottage as he counted the coins in the Queen's purse. First thing in the morning, Matenko chopped a raw onion and went to the palace to see the king. "Your Majesty, my poor old wife is dead." The king felt very sorry for his old jester and gave him a purse before sending him home. "Ha ha! Hurrah!" cried Matenko when he reached home and counted out 200 gold pieces from the king's purse. "Now we have a little fortune." Then he kissed his wife and set out to complete the rest of his plan. On the sideboard in their little cottage, he set 2 big lighted funeral candles, and beside them he laid the 2 purses with all the gold pieces still in them. Then he told Wanda to lie down on the floor. "Cross your arms over your chest and don't move. You must pretend to be dead," he told her. He covered her from head to foot with a white sheet. Then he lay down beside her, covered himself with another white sheet, crossed his arms over his chest, and so they lay and waited. In the meantime, as soon as Matenko had left the palace with the purse of coins, the king hurried into his wife's chamber to tell her that the old jester's wife had died. "But, my dear, you must be mistaken," said the Queen. "It's the jester, not the jester's wife, who's dead." Then they began to quarrel as to which of them was right. "I tell you what, let's go and see who is dead," suggested the Queen at last. So they ordered their carriage and drove to the jester's cottage. When they knocked and walked into the little cottage, they found the candles lit, their purses on the sideboard, and the 2 old people covered with white sheets. Obviously, Matenko and Wanda were both dead. But which of them died first? Asked the Queen. "It must have been Matenko." "No, it must have been Wanda," said the king. They began to quarrel again when Matenko jumped up from under his sheet and said, "Your Majesty, my wife died first, but I was dead before her." You old rascal," laughed the king and queen at the same time, too glad to find the old couple still alive to be angry. And when they tearfully explained that they'd pretended to be dead because they'd been starving, the king and queen felt very much ashamed. At once they promised to send money to Matenko and Wanda whenever they needed it. The old jester and his wife lived comfortably for many years. Every now and then Matenko used to say to Wanda, "You see, my dear, even an old jester can sometimes play a clever trick." Now, it would be great if you subscribed. That is, you become a subscriber. Look out for the subscribe button. What happens, you see, is that I make new vids every few months, and then I post them up 1 a week for a while. So if you subscribe, you get to see the new ones just as they come hot off the press. Eeeew.